looking like this? Tell me, am I looking like this? No, not at all.
Hey, what's going on, people? My name's Tie-Dye, and welcome to the first of many tutorials we will be doing here on my channel and my website. Today what we're going to be covering is this picture right here you see on my desktop. Now we're going to be doing two tutorials for this one. In this specific tutorial we will be covering the landscape, so things such as these rocks here, the water, the mountains in the background, things like that, as well as the render settings. And then in the next tutorial we'll cover things such as the trees, the clouds, the sky, and then dive into Photoshop to finish off the picture itself. So let's jump right into Cinema 4D. I'm going to be using R14 Studio. You guys can be using any version. It really is pretty universal when it comes to what I'm going to be doing here, and let's jump right into it. So the first thing you notice when you see this picture here is these sort of rugged sort of rock walls with water in the middle, sort of a stream heading towards this mountain. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the base of our actual scene, and it's going to be pretty cool. It is fairly simple for a lot of people who haven't dove too much into low poly with Cinema 4D. It really isn't that hard because it is working with very low numbers of polygons. It's quite a simple thing compared to modeling something like a creature or anything realistic. Low poly is much more simple and a lot of fun. It does have a really cool, unique style. I do have a few pictures here that I can show you. Besides that one, we also have this picture right here. And what else? I have a bunch. This one's a bit of an older one, but you guys get the idea of what low poly is. You can even put it in backgrounds of things such as that. And you guys have seen a few banners of mine where I've used low poly in the background just as a filler, and it looks really nice. So we're just going to focus on the landscape aspect though in this tutorial. So let's dive right into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is drop in a plane, just any plane. It really doesn't matter. Then we're just going to change this width and height segments here. So let's go with something around 5,000 because this is going to be the base of our entire image. We want something bigger, and just so it's easier when we import other things. And of course these segments here are going to be determining how many polygons are going to be in our actual landscape, and since we have a rather large landscape, we're going to want a rather larger number of polygons. So let's try and see what 60 looks like. That is a fair amount right there. I'm pretty content with how that looks, and let's dive right into the actual modeling part of this. Now, working with low poly, the one thing that you do have to remember is this tag right here. It's called the Fong tag, and you want to delete it right away when working with low poly, because what it does is, actually I'll keep it to show you guys what it does. Let's just model something, but basically what it does is it rounds out everything so that it doesn't really have a jagged look, but we're going for that jagged look. So I'll show you what it looks like before and after. I'll render some stuff out while we go along, but you should delete that right away. I'm just going to keep it to show you. So we're going to try and make this plane editable. That's the first thing that we're going to want to do. So make sure your plane is selected, and either click this button right here or hit C on your keyboard, whatever you'd rather do. I just hit C because I'm more of a keyboard shortcut kind of guy, but as long as it's editable, it is good. It'll have this little triangle picture with these points on it, and if that's, you'll know then that you've actually done it. So we're going to go here to this little arrow icon and right click on here. Or, sorry, not yet. We're going to click on the arrow icon, then to this little cube here. It's going to show like the surface of something lit up, and then we'll be able to select certain points here. We're not going to want to do anything with that yet. We're going to want to right click, then go to brush, and then change the fall off to constant and the mode to surface. Now what this is going to do is it's going to let us to draw onto here like so, and as you can already see, that makes some kind of really jagged mountains. I don't know, you could do something with that if you wanted to, but that's not the look I'm going for today. Let's try to actually make this a little less powerful. 100% is a lot. Let's start to go off with something like 45, yeah. And the radius you can control by bringing this up or down, or hitting the square bracket keys on your keyboard. That's also going to do it. So once you have a decent strength and a good radius, you're just going to want to sort of pave the way for your water. And I'm going to start by making a smaller sort of path and then beef it up a bit later. So this is the path I'm doing. I'm just going to make sort of like a squiggly line pattern here, and just follow that on this side as well. And there we go. It's just a very, very, very light outline before we do anything else. And then what I'm going to do to make it a bit better is I'm going to make this a bit bigger, So you can either, once again, use these arrows or the square bracket keys, but I'm going to bring the strength down to about 30% and then just go over it again. So we sort of have this sort of bigger ridge, but you can see it's falling off around where it should be, which is what I'm going for here. And I just go over all that again, and then it sort of buffs it up a little bit, makes it a bit more chunky. And to top it all off, we're going to do the exact opposite of that. We're going to make our radius a bit smaller, but turn the strength up to something like 70%, and just get those peaks up nice and high. That one was pretty damn high, but we're going to keep that. Let's get those peaks a bit higher, whatever you think looks good, because that's the one thing. I'm not going to be teaching you guys exactly how to do something. While you're following this, I want you to do it whatever you think looks best is going to make your thing. I don't want you to copy exactly what I'm doing here, but that's what it looks like. And now I'm going to show you guys what I mean by the Phong tag making everything rounded out. Now you see when I render this, it's sort of rounded and it looks like a really shitty PS2 game from like 10 years ago. But we can get rid of that by simply deleting this Phong tag, and then when we hit render, you see it's really jagged, and that's the look we're going for. Obviously, in this early state of the render, it looks pretty bad, but that's the basic idea we're going for right now. So if you're this far, then you're obviously you got something good so far. Now we're going to be working on making this more of a terrain rather than just a path. So once again, make sure your brush is selected. If you did get deselected, once again you click this little mouse button, make sure surface is selected, right click and go to brush, and with the same fall off and mode selected, I'm going to make the strength something fairly light, something like a 25%, and we're just going to go over everything and make it more bumpy, more unnatural, something that isn't just your regular you know, nothing's just straight and normal and boring. We're gonna make everything nice and buffed out, more of like a landscape, which is exactly what we're making. So let me just finish this off. And you guys also have to keep in mind that with the strength, you can actually in fact make it negative. So if I make the strength negative 25, or yeah, sure, 24, I can make this go down, and it also helps with the landscape as well. And I like to make it go negative inside here, because this is where we're going to be adding our water. So if I make it negative in here, then when the water comes up, it really won't affect the rocks around it, the landscape around it too much. Plus it's more natural. Everyone knows that where rivers are, the land there has sort of been eroded away, or it's just lower overall, so that gives it more of a realistic look to it. And there we go. Now we have a pretty solid looking landscape right there. I'm pretty happy with that. Now what we're going to be doing is actually adding a texture to our land. Now you can do this any way. You can either add just a normal color. What I like to do to make this more abstract is, because since this whole thing is already abstract, I like to add a gradient, something slightly unnatural. So under color, we're going to hit this texture little arrow here and go to gradient. Double click on the gradient picture, and then we have our two colors. You can add as many as you want. I'm just going to add two personally. The first color, I'm going to make it more of like a sandy beige, something that you actually see. And the secondary color, something more unnatural. Since in the actual picture that I showed at the beginning, I had more of this color, what should I go with this time? I'm going to go with a purple, sort of a faded, less saturated purple, like so. I'm pretty happy with that. And obviously just adjust it to however you want it, change this to however you want it. I'm going to go with the 2DV and drag that on and see how that makes it look. That is pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with that for sure. And that is our landscape. So we're going to add a bit more to it, obviously. We're not done this tutorial yet. Let's start by adding some water. For the water, we're also going to be using a plane. And make sure to delete the Phong tag right away. You guys know why at this point. And what was the size that we used for this? I believe it was it 5,000? It might have been. Yeah, that seems right. So once you make that the same size as your plane, as you can see, it is still out of place a bit. Like you can see it in these parts here, and we don't want that. So since we did make this part a bit deeper where the water should be, we can actually lower this, and for the most part it should fix it. But I'm not going to be doing that. I'll show you a technique that I use. I'm going to keep it exactly where it was before. And before we make this editable, you want to make more of those width and height segments. So we're going to go for something like 55, that should be a good amount, and then we'll make it editable by either hitting this button up here once again, or pressing C while your plane is selected. We're going to be doing a very similar technique to what we did to the land, but we're also going to be adding a few other things. It's going to be pretty cool. So let's just hit this button right here, make sure this is selected. So we're just going to be pretty much getting to the brush again. Whatever I said to get to the brush before, copy those steps, which is select the arrow, the surface, right-click, brush. And we're going to be making sure that our strength is a negative number. Probably negative 25 will do. And what we're going to do with this is just go over all those parts that are sticking out on the land of our plane and make sure they go under, because we don't want the water to be sticking out in places that it shouldn't be. So just make sure that's all lower and out of sight. That way we can make sure the water is just sticking out where the water should be. And this is just my personal method. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this is just how I personally do it. And as you can see, if we were to get a camera right around here, you'd only be able to see the water where you want the water to see, or where you'd want to see the water. That was pretty bad English right there. So the next thing we're going to do is make a water texture. Now, for the color, obviously, it's whatever you think your water should look like. If you want to make it lava, be my guest and make it orange, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to make it normal water. A nice crystal blue like that. That's pretty nice. Specular, you want to keep that on for water, obviously. Transparency, you're going to want to check mark that and make sure it's fairly low. You don't want to be able to see all the way through something, especially in low poly. It's not supposed to look too realistic. Make sure the refraction rate's 1.33, which is what water is. You don't have to go that far into depth or far into detail, because people won't really notice that much, but whatever. I like to just make sure things are as good as possible. And then reflection, you want to add the slightest bit of reflection, since it is supposed to be a very undetailed image. And I'm just going to make this transparency a little bit more, something along the lines of 56%. That looks good. Throw that on there, and then if we just do a quick render, it will look yeah, we're still early. We haven't added any of the render settings yet, so it's not supposed to look too good right now. But as you can see, the water's pretty straight, and if I go back to this image, you see how it's all like bumpy and it looks like actual flowing water. Now we're going to be doing that right now. We're going to still be using this brush tool, like I said, and we're just going to go over it very, very lightly, because we're going to be adding a lot of effectors and whatnot to actually make this look a bit more realistic. But just go over it so it's all uneven, sort of like what we did with the land earlier, but just not as intense. Just go over all of that, and then I'm going to go over it again with a negative so it's not really bulging out too much. And yeah, as long as it's uneven, we should be good. You don't really have to go too far into detail with this at all. Now that that is like that, it's sort of bumpy, you can see that. Nothing too crazy though, so what we're going to be doing is we are going to be adding a random. So we go to MoGraph, Effector, and click on Random, drop that into our plane, go to the Deformer tab, and change it to Polygon. As you can see already, if I go between Off and Polygon, it adds these waves, these bumps. It makes it look a bit more like running water. Now if we go back to the Effector tab, we can change the strength, and I'm pretty sure 100% is good for now. Now we're also going to be adding a few other ones. We're going to be adding a displacer. We're going to be doing the same thing. Drag that into the plane. For the displacer, we're going to be going to shading, shader, and noise. And then we can change these as well. The strength, the height, if you want to make it crazy, you can do whatever you want really. This is going to be a bit more calm for myself. I'm going to like it's at a 93 strength, 39 centimeters. That looks fairly good. And then we're going to be doing one more thing, and we are going to be adding a where is it? A connect. Now how we get to that is we go to, where is it? This one right here where the array symbol is, and go down to connect, and we're going to drag the plane into the connect, and then we're going to be changing the tolerance all the way up, and then you get these sort of triangle, jagged, just very, very cool looking polygons. But the thing is when you add it to a connect, it adds its own built-in Fong tag. And what we're going to want to do here is in Fong mode, under the connect, change it to manual, and then it's going to get rid of that. It's going to make it back to our low poly look, and that is exactly what we want. Now we're going to be doing a few more things, and I'll jump right into the render settings. We're almost done the landscape part of this video. Now you can do anything you want with this, guys. You really don't have to follow every step that I want to. Like if you wanted to add more with this brush, say you wanted to make more jagged mountains here, and just make those everywhere, you could have done that if you wanted to. You're not supposed to follow exactly what I want. This is just to teach you guys the techniques, and I want you guys to go ahead and then show me what you guys can do after learning these simple techniques, because it's really not too complicated at all. Anyone who's starting off with Cinema 4D can really get the hang of it. Sorry about that, I really do need to get a drink. That's better. But like I was saying, anyone who's new to Cinema 4D can really get these techniques. They are very, very simple. And they make a really, really cool looking image when you're done. And the render settings do help out a lot, so if you're thinking right now it doesn't look too good, just stick until the end and I'll show you what it can actually turn out to be like. So we're going to add a few more things. We're going to be adding mountains, and that's very, very simple to do. All we're going to do is go to this cube here, click on our landscape. Just going to drag this up so we have a better look at it. As you can see, it's a lot smaller because we made our landscape itself a lot bigger. We're going to delete the font tag on the landscape itself, and then we're just going to edit the height so it's more of a mountain shape, like so. And then we're going to make it a bit bigger. And actually for this part, what I'm going to do is make an actual angle that we're going to be making our picture look out of. So this looks like a pretty, let's see, let's find a good angle. You know, I want to have to move this for a second because it is blocking my view. Let's see, I'm pretty happy with this view right here. That's pretty good. For a tutorial, this is pretty good. So I'm just going to drop a camera here by clicking the camera icon, and we can get back to work on our landscape. So we're going to grab this mountain that we just made, and what are we going to do with it? We are going to put it wherever we think it looks best. But before we do that, we're going to grab it and bring the width and depth segments down to something more along the lines of 45. Let's give it more of a low poly look, maybe even lower than that. Maybe 35 will be a bit better. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And rotate it, find a good angle. I like this. This is just seed 1, or seed 0, sorry. If we go through all these seeds, there's tons and tons of different mountains that you can look at. And we're just going to add our texture onto there. And as we can see, it sort of follows the same design as our rugged, water-filled landscape. And then we're just going to put that there. If we go back into our camera, we see it's just to the side there, which is good. We're just going to want it to cover the entire length of our image. And if you want to, you can actually make this a different texture. This is what I'm going to do for the purpose of this tutorial, so I can show you a few more things. Even if it doesn't look as good, I just want to show you as many things as I possibly can. So for the color, I'm just going to make it a, what's just a normal mountain color. I guess for this, we can just continue with that sort of orangish, beigeish look. Yeah, let's just go with that. Turn off the specular, and let's get rid of this old texture here. Throw that on the landscape. Also, that reminds me, I should probably turn off the specular for the actual texture that we're using for everything. So that's a pretty good mountain color, I guess, if we go back into the camera. Yeah, that should be good. And then we're just going to hold control, click on our landscape, and drag up to make a second one, an exact copy. Move it slightly to the side. Actually, no, before I do that, there's something I need to show you. With the landscape, we're going to add a few effectors here. We're going to be adding one which is called Polygon Reduction. Drop that right into the landscape. And as you can see, it really changes how the mountain itself looks. It really makes it look more simple, and I really like this effector. But the problem is when you add it to something like the plane here that we made with all the rugged sort of mountains and where the water flows through, since it has a gradient texture, it really messes it up. Let me show you. If I add this gradient texture onto the landscape, and then go through the polygon reduction, you see that it adds this sort of weird, chunky, like it really doesn't look natural kind of look, and I really don't like that. If it's your look, if you're going for that, go ahead, by all means, you can make it look like that, but I really don't think that looks good at all, even though that the actual effector, the polygon reduction effector, really makes it look great, which is kind of a letdown. So we're just going to have this plain sort of texture, and I'm going to make this really low poly, at about 83%, And I'm liking that. I think that looks good. We're also going to be adding just a few other things just to make it look a little less natural, a little less recognizable from the original. And let's see, what else could we add? Let's try that connect again. So we're going to drag the landscape into the connect and just drag it up until we see something happening. And let's see. That looks pretty solid to me. Once again, make sure the font goes to manual, and I am pretty happy with that. Now the one thing you have to keep in mind, and this is what sort of helped me remember, is if something is green, you drag whatever you want to change into the green, and if something's purple, you drag the purple onto whatever you're trying to change. So I dragged my landscape into the green, but then I dragged the purple onto the landscape. That's just how I sort of remember that. And I'm just going to change the name of this to Mountain, or MT for short. Or not my, wow. Mountain, MT. There we go. And that's going to be our first mountain. Now back to what I was saying before. Hold Control and click and drag, and it'll make an exact duplicate. Did I just mess up there? I totally did. So hold Control, drag all the way up, and you'll make a second mountain. There we go. Now let's just move this one right around there. And then we'll open it up, go to the landscape itself, change the C to something that you think looks good for your situation. I am pretty happy with C10 right there. That looks pretty good for what I'm wanting. I want to go back into my camera, make sure everything looks good. That looks pretty solid to me. Continue on with this method, hold Control, duplicate that, bring it over slightly, and at this point your computer might be struggling a little bit. It is a lot to render out, especially with so many different things and so many custom pieces here. But we're just going to continue on with this, make sure it looks good, zoom in with the camera, go over a bit more. Let's see, maybe even rotate this a bit just to make sure things are... Oh, I guess I sort of have the anchor point slightly messed up there. Whatever, we're just going to continue on with this. Doesn't really matter what the angle is. And just continue on with, you know what? Number 40 looks pretty good. Continue on making more and more until you have something that you are pleased with. And honestly, this is such a cool style. I'm very, very into low poly. I think it looks great. And we're just going to zoom into the camera one more time. We should be almost done. And yeah, so drag it on more and more. Fifth mountain. It's getting kind of repetitive, I know. But it's totally worth it. The look looks great, and then we're gonna dive into the render settings after this, and you'll see just how amazing this can look. It really is amazing how cool just something that's so simple can turn out. And this should be about the last one. Yeah, let's just make it big just to make sure. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe just rotate it a bit. And let's see. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That looks great. So now what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to go into our render settings, which is this third one right here. You guys should probably know this. Output, I want to make mine 1920 by 1080, simply because that is the resolution of my computer monitor, and also that's 1080p, pretty much a standard for high definition these days. And once I have that, make sure you go to save. Choose wherever you want to save it to. I'm just going to go to the desktop and name it Tut for tutorial. Save. Alpha channel, we don't really have one, but if you wanted to make sure that there was sort of a transparent thing, check that. I'm not going to. And then we're going to go to format. PNG definitely is the best one for this. Now we're going to want to go to this effect tab. We're going to want to add two things. One, ambient occlusion. And we're going to want to drag the contrast up to something high, like 40%, something like that. That's going to be good, and that's all we have to do for that. And then we're going to go back into Effector, go to Global Illumination, and just let that be. So now if we go back into our camera, we're going to be adding one last thing, rendering it out, and show you guys what we've made so far. So we're going to want to go to a physical sky. That's what we're going to want to create. It should be right here, and as you can see, it already brightens things up quite a bit. So in our physical sky, we're going to go to time and location and just mess around, and this is going to be some really cool lighting that you can make whatever you want, whatever time of day you want. You just type it in and it's going to make it. I'm going to render this out and see how it looks. I'll be right back, guys. My recording software doesn't like rendering stuff and recording at the same time, so I'll show you guys what this render looks like when I'm done. I'll be right back. And look at that. It really is amazing how much just a few simple render techniques can just really pop a picture. That's what we have so far as a landscape, and that's where I'm going to conclude this tutorial, because we were just focusing on the landscape itself. Next tutorial, we're going to be adding things such as the sky, clouds, maybe even trees, just some really cool stuff to make this more realistic overall. But that, for just a quick, how long did that take? Only 25 minutes or so, is pretty cool. And if you're new to low poly, focus on just messing around with a lot of these techniques, and you never know what you can make. Personally, I think this looks great for the time that we put into it, and like I said, make sure you click on the next video in this tutorial series, and we'll really make this picture a lot better than it is right now. But hopefully you guys learned something. If you did, make sure to drop a like on this video, share it around, and if you're gonna make something, tweet me your picture. I'd love to see what you guys made out of this. But once again, guys, my name's Tie-Dye. Hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial. See ya!